Welcome everyone, this is a brief talk about the Intercultural Science-Art Project. My name is Demian Nahuelgos. I'm from the National University of Rosario in Argentina, and this talk is part of the Festival de Matemática 2020, a science communication part of the annual reunion of the Argentinian Mathematical Society. And this talk, of course, was originally in Spanish, but since everybody involved in this project comes from all around the world, I create here a new English version for all of you. So welcome everyone, let's start. So let's start with the motivation, with the idea of this project, and it's that frequently many young researchers in mathematics and computer science in particular have issues and problems when they want to share their research, their work, for instance their PhD thesis, with their family and friends, because we work on many abstract fields and it's difficult to describe them, to share them. So imagine, for instance, that I'm at home with some friends and they see some notes I've written on a paper, and these are beautiful formulas, but however, if I try to explain them and I try to explain each and every one of these formulas, I won't succeed. Nobody will understand anything at all. However, if I try to find visual ways to explain what I do, and if I now give a little bit of color to this whole experience, of course, we have a much more pleasant result and something that can be understood by many, many more. So that's it. That's what this project is all about. I invited young researchers from all over the world to represent their own research by artistic means. I chose an artist as a leitmotif. In this case, it was Rene Magritte, the Belgian artist, and all researchers who participated created an artwork inspired by the work of Rene Magritte. And once I got all submissions, we met and discussed the results, thoughts, and observations. Where did we meet? Was at the Heidelberg Laureate Forum. This is a networking event for young researchers in mathematics and computer science, where they invite laureates in both fields, mathematics and computer science, to give talks, to start conversations, inspire, and share their experience with the young researchers. So that's where we met, and that's how we met as well. Finally, one last observation. I added one final element to this project, and it was the intercultural focus. I invited the participants to represent, recreate, share their own culture, their origin within their artwork, and we'll see just in a few moments how we managed to do this. Now let's go on with Rene Magritte. So we used the work of Rene Magritte as an inspiration for our works, and he was a Belgian surrealist who used his artworks to represent philosophical thoughts. So one such thought in Magritte's world is perception. Perception is very present in his artworks. Here on the left hand side, for instance, we see a painting within his artwork, and the painting depicts some mountains, and of course, since they fit perfectly well the background, what we might deduce or infer is that at the background behind this painting there is exactly this mountain. Yes, it seems such a natural thing to deduce. However, we have nothing, absolutely nothing, to prove this claim. And of course, that's what this artwork is all about. Magritte tries to highlight mistakes we can make when we trust our perception. And this is a very important thought for mathematicians as well. So in mathematics, we are not allowed to simply say this is so because it must be so. We are not allowed to simply say something because it's our intuition, because we say, I'm sure it must be that way. No, we have to prove everything rigorously. And this is a beautiful connection we can find in Magritte's work. Here on the right hand side, we have another work with a mathematical interpretation. Here, a seemingly similar thought conveys a completely different idea. We see an artist observing an egg, but depicting a pigeon or a bird. And here the idea is that it is very important, very good to see what comes next, to infer, deduce from our hypotheses what theses might be true. And of course, here we have again a very strongly mathematical thought. And yes, we see that these artworks by Rene Magritte, who seem so simple, often surprise us. So next, here on the left hand side, we have a very famous painting by Rene Magritte. We see a man with a bowler hat, and an apple is covering his face. And according to Magritte himself, this work represents the human desire to see what's beyond, to see what we cannot see. Of course, we will never get enough, so we won't be happy when we see the face. If we try to get the apple out of the way, there will be always another apple. In this case of the artwork, we can say, once we see the face of the man, we want to see what's behind the man, what's in the ocean. And again, if we think of mathematicians, scientists in general, we don't know a last theorem. So whenever we have a beautiful result, we want to see what's next. What can we prove now? What can we understand now? And finally, if we think that a mermaid is half a woman, half a fish, then what we see here on the right hand side can perfectly be understood as a mermaid, of course. And what we see here as a message is that we have not only problems with perception, just like we saw earlier, but also with language. So we can't trust language neither. Finally, this is not a pipe. So this is called the Treachery of Images, one of Magritte's most famous ones. We see a pipe and the text in French, this is not a pipe. And of course it's not a pipe, it's the drawing of a pipe. But what seems to be such a simple observation has again a meaningful thought, a philosophical thought, we can say. And it's that Magritte questions to what extent we can describe our reality with images, with us, if you want to say it that way. And again, how the question is, to what extent can we describe our worlds with words? Just keep in mind our beautiful mermaid here in the background. And this artwork and this thought has again a mathematical interpretation, because even though mathematics seems to be so perfect for people who are not working in mathematics, there are many limitations, and we might question and ask, to what extent is mathematics able to describe and depict our reality? And this is the work I used as an inspiration for the young researchers, and it gave me a beautiful element here, the text. So I said I wanted to include an intercultural aspect so that people can describe share their culture. And what we did is everybody wrote this text in their own language. So we will see different languages, different alphabets even. And so without any further ado, here we have the results. Behold our scientific artworks by our young researchers. How will we proceed now? So imagine this to be a wall in an old house full of paintings, and this is the scientific art wall. Now we won't have enough time to see each and one of them, but I would choose some of them, I would describe them, I would explain what the idea behind them was, and yeah, that's it. That's what we want to do. So let's start, for instance, with this one. So this one was made by Shinobi Kayode from Nigeria, and I picked it up because it beautifully represents what I was talking about at the beginning. So instead of talking about equations and formulas and whatsoever, we can simply understand what his work is good for by looking at this work. So we see some structural problems and cracks, and we immediately understand that the research Shinobi Kayode does may be abstract, may be difficult to understand, but the applications are straightforward. So he works on solving these kinds of problems. So yeah, let's go back to our wall and see what's next. So next, here by Abdul Ganiju Jimu, again from Nigeria, we see what looks like an X-ray, and actually his artwork was inspired by his work and his interactions from medicine. So his work in computer science is strongly connected to medicine, and he observed that people from the medical environment always talked about here what we see in this X-ray and what we see in that other X-ray, and the observation Abdul Ganiju made is that they are not actually looking at X-rays, they are looking at pixels, of course, because this is always in a screen. And I liked it very, very much because it's such a Magritte-esque observation. So again, this is not what you are naturally thinking you're looking at. There is a layer between what you think and what you're actually looking at, and of course very beautiful because it captures so beautifully what this work, this idea of the project is all about. Wonderful. So let's see next what we can have. Wonderful. What's that? Away with it. Wonderful. So let's see. So let's go on with, I think, this one. This is a photography by Latif Joel, so once again from Nigeria. So we had a strong participation from Nigeria. And what do we see? In the picture we see a coffee mug, and we see movement, of course. And what Latif Joel works on are fixed point theorems. So what do these kind of fixed point theorems do? Well, they analyze systems in movement, we could say, just like in this case the coffee, which is rotating within the mug, and they provide sufficient conditions to assure that within this system there will be a point where there is no movement at all. Yes, that's what it's called, fixed point, because it is not moving. And of course in this photography, the center point of the mug, there will be no movement at all, because this is a rotational movement. And I like this idea very much because it is so much more easy to understand what these kind of theorems do by looking at this picture instead of explaining the mathematical theory and what they rigorously explain. Once again, let's see what our wall has to say. And again, we have some problems here. Did it go away? Well, wonderful. Next we have here by George Baralich from Serbia, and this is a collage about his research, and it's very interesting because he took a figure from his PhD thesis where we see many of these tori, donuts, and replaced them by eatable donuts, and also by coffee mugs. So why is this? Because in topology, what his work is connected to strongly connected to topology, and in topology, coffee mugs and donuts are the same, because for topologists the only difference is that there is a hole in the middle, and everything else does not matter at all. So they are both the same. So in his artwork, where we see coffee mugs and donuts floating around, it's a very beautiful digital collage. I like it very much because it's so much fun, and it gives such a cartoonish character to the figure from his PhD thesis. Wonderful. Once again, let's see what our wall has to say. Oppa! Again. One. Yes, that's it. There we have it. So let's go now for this one by Sander McCrane from the US, and it's called "This is not two worlds, it's one." And this is very beautiful because it's about Langland's program, and it is so difficult to explain Langland's program to people outside mathematics. It's difficult for mathematicians in the first place. So imagine, some years ago, I think 2 years, 3 years, Robert Langland, the creator of this theory, was awarded the Abdul Prize, and it was such a problem to describe, to explain why this was important, why he was awarded this prize. So let's see. Langland's program can be interpreted as a huge and very big and long machinery where we connect two different worlds which are apart one from the other. Here we see the both worlds that are entirely different. One of them you can imagine what it's about. It's number theory, and this whole apparatus tries to create connections to make this not to make one world out of these two, and we see that people are working hard on both sides to create these connections, to connect these two worlds. And I like it very much because it's so visual, and it explains what you need to understand what it does. It explains why it is such a big issue, and without going into details about all the technical gibberish, mathematical gibberish. So very beautiful. I like this very much. Wonderful. And back to our menu. Again. There we have it. So for the last one of today, let's go on the top right, and we see by Aung San Min from Myanmar a depiction of a pheasant. So his work is about predator-prey models, and in his research he works in particular with models for pheasants. So he depicted one such pheasant and using only plots from his own research. That was very nice. I like it very much because of this, because he uses his real figures from his work to depict, for his artwork, to depict the pheasant. Very beautiful. And now I would like to do some honorary mentions, because I don't want to make this too long for you, but I would like to mention these two here. So let's see. First we have here by Ji Li from China, confectionary art. This is amazing. We have a magic square here. Every row and every column sums up to 33. So G has her own bakery in the Netherlands, I think, and he created a mathematical one, a mathematical cake, and I love this idea of creating mathematics for eating. I love it. And finally, last honorary mention is here by Dragana Ra Djich from Serbia, and I like this very much because she did not have enough time to create her artwork prior to the event, prior to HLF, but she wanted to join us to be part of the project. So he grabbed a piece of paper, some pens, and created during a boat trip in Heidelberg on the Neckar, a beautiful depiction of her research. So she works on financial mathematics, and the hills here represent ups and downs of a financial system. We see the sun representing the time, very important when it comes to stock markets, and the tree here represents the benefit, what we are all aiming for. So very fun, very beautiful, and what I liked most is what I just said, that she did it just because she wanted to join us and because she was so enthusiastic about it. So I'm very thankful for that. So yes, I will let it. I will stop here because I still want to share some conclusions with you. Because during the Heidelberg Laureate Forum we had the opportunity to discuss the results. One moment. There we go. To discuss the results, our ideas, conclusions, and so on. And here I'd like to share with you some of them. So, what did we learn here? So, the first question that I would like to address is: do arts and science share something? Do they have something in common? Because during the process of creating our own artworks, we made some observations concerning this. So for instance, both arts and science, they take our reality, in this case for instance a real apple, and use their own tools. Each discipline has different tools to create an abstraction of this real world object. So for instance in arts we can paint an apple, and in science we can find a formula that describes this shape, geometric shape, for instance. So in the case of science we have an uniformly approved scientific method that we scientists share, or all we mathematicians share. And in the case of arts, it depends on the artist how he uses his artistic approach to work with this reality. Here it is a more subjective approach, we could say. What I like most about this comparison in particular is that it enables us to describe scientists as artists that simply use their own tools, their own methods to work with reality. And of course in both cases, both arts and science, it's a creative process, so there is a lot of creativity involved, not only in arts but particularly in science. And that might surprise many people, because usually we don't think as mathematics as a creative process. But it actually is. It is. You need a lot of creativity to be a mathematician or a scientist in general. But on the other side, we usually associate arts with a creative process, with inspiration. But it is also important to note that for an artistic work, you need a lot of reflection. You need to think things through very well. And that is again an observation that goes against what we usually think of when we think about art. That was something we usually associate with science and mathematics. So we see they are stronger connected than we would usually think. So in both cases we have to ask questions at the beginning of the process. What do I want to achieve? What tools do I have to achieve this? How can I do this? Do I need new tools? Do I have everything I need, or do I have to create new tools? And once we have all answers to these questions, we have a final result of this process. So here, for instance, we have an apple, a real apple that was used to bring a philosophical thought, an artistic thought, to the observer. And on the right hand side we have the sphere, well, the three-dimensional ball, that was used as a mathematical abstract interpretation of the apple, and a theorem talking about these kind of objects. In this case, a fixed point theorem, just like the ones I mentioned before. So another misconception that we can see in this comparison is that we always think of mathematics as something really abstract. So we see mathematics as something very far away from our reality, and this is not the case for us. So we usually feel that that arts is something very close to our reality. Of course, this has to do not only because it's strongly visual, but only because it appeals to our emotions. So we have a stronger bond. Empathy for an artistic work is far more easy than for a fixed point theorem. However, if we take a close look, here we have an artwork that tries to convey a philosophical thought. So we're talking about the limitations of language to represent our reality. It's so abstract if you think about it. And again, for mathematics, you have to keep in mind that mathematics is strongly motivated by reality. So we want to find rigorous and consistent answers that are universally valid for our world using mathematics. So of course it's very, very, very close to our real world, even though we have many formulas that many don't even understand. So again, here we have another misconception that we observed. Another comparison arises when we take a look at the motivations and the goals from both scientists and artists. So for instance, Rene Magritte had a clear and definite idea, a philosophy, a message he wanted to share with the world when he created his artworks. And this is exactly the same for the scientists. We all create science with one clear purpose. We want to solve a problem because there is an application for it, there is a meaning for it, there's a thought behind this. And in both cases, once the results are there, once they are shared, it is not longer for the creator to decide what is done with it. So once society interacts with artworks or with scientific results, they do what they want to do. They won't do what you tell them to do. And this is very important. That is very beautiful, because the more application a scientific result has, the more valuable it is for society, and the more interpretations artistic words have, the more valuable these artworks will be for society. And so it's good that society makes and uses these results for their own goals, for their own purposes, and without taking into account what the creator wanted us to do with it. One perfect example for this is this whole Intercultural Science-Art Project itself, because I'm sure Rene Magritte did not think about mathematicians and computer scientists when he created his artwork, and about scientific interpretations of his work. And again, I'm sure all these young researchers who joined this project, they never thought of giving their research a scientific touch. So I think this whole project visualizes perfectly this whole process of taking something that is created by an artist or scientist and doing with it something entirely different. And now, on a final note, both science and arts share one common motivation, and it's the search for beauty and harmony. And in both cases, both science and arts, we have that, if not corrupted, they are egalitarian, democratic, and peaceful pillars of society and its development. And I think that both science and arts represent what humanity should be striving for. So yes, that's it for today. I would like to thank you very much for your attention. If you're interested in our work, please contact me. Here you have some social media. I would love to hear from you, and bye bye.